we are back with another one. And this time, we're going to swap it around a bit for Matt because he typically plays systems like the Tromp or London or Tory type situations. He likes his bishop and he likes his queen pawn. And I like playing against those systems with black and try to mix it up a bit. And this one is probably going to be one of our shorter games that we cover. But we're going to kick things off. And I actually stay flexible against multiple move orders when I'm playing the King's Indian. Like if we're thinking from the perspective of my aggressive Queen's Gambit decline text, D5 would be completely fine here if I'm prepared to play against those Queen's Gambits, which we've got you covered if you take a look in that book or the short and sweet on Chessable. Now, I was in the mood to play King's Indians as we've seen like in the previous game. So I played D6, and it's a move order for Phillidor or check system. Like we had Grandmaster Marin recently did an entire series on the Phillidor, and it was spot on. Take a look at that if you're interested. And this is to play against specifically a move order that I do not like to play against is the Versov. But if I go D6 here, if he goes E4, well, we're back in Phillidor or check system. And if they go Bishop F4, it also works with this move order, because if I play G6, well, now you trapped me into a Versov line where I can get attacked. But if I simply play D6, after knight C3, knight BD7, well, look at that, we're in a Phillidor, and I'm getting a tempo off your bishop, which is why I choose specific move orders to play against specific lines. So after knight F3, D6, my opponent plays bishop G5, and we've seen this scheme of development, E5, and now we're in a much better Phillidor. So we'll compare this position to the typical Phillidor now.
Okay.
The typical Phillidor is E4, E6, D4, knight F6, knight C3, E5, knight F3, knight BD7, bishop C4, bishop E7. And I want you to see White's pieces.
Yeah.
Both knights hitting the center, bishop attacking on F7. That's the main line of the Phillidor. Now let's jump back to our game and notice how this knight, instead of being on C3, is on D2, passive, and instead of a bishop putting pressure, we got a bishop on G5 that I'm not too worried about.
Okay.
So this is already a good place to start, and I forgot to mention my opponent's rating. He's roughly 2100 in Lee Chess, and we're playing with black, and we're playing to win, as always.
And you still want to maintain the King's Indian feel? Because H6 would be my first instinct here.
That's one candidate move. What's two others?
Bishop E7, breaking the pin,
and
maybe C6.
Okay.
Just kind of flexible.
Flexible move. Very reasonable. Okay. I don't have fault with any of those moves, but the most aggressive move actually makes our opponent makes a decision is your first choice, H6, and that's what I played.
Okay.
It says, do you want to trade off your bishop pair for no reason? Because if he takes, what am I going to take back with?
Ooh, good question. Probably the knight. I mean, it opens up your bishop. If you take with a G-pawn, that opens up the G-file.
None of the above so far.
Queen takes?
Yeah. I don't want to unnecessarily double the pawns in this position because White can easily defend with, say, G3.
Got it.
And if I take with a knight, D takes E5, D takes E5, knight takes E5, loses a pawn.
Okay.
So, taking with a queen, just easy development for the lady.
Gotcha.
He plays bishop H4, and now we go to secondary move, bishop E7. So here's a little pop quiz. This is not what happened in the game, but what is wrong with if White plays D5 here?
Feels like a puzzle rush move after knight takes D5.
Because he's losing material, and that is definitely, I've seen that one pop up in Puzzle Rush quite a lot, where we take back with a piece and we're up a pawn. So if you do play the Phillidor or King's Indian structures, or even the Czech Benoni, that tactic has come up in a lot of my games, so I'm always ready to pounce on it. And that's where it comes in to studying structural tactics. A lot of tactics books are geared towards, here's a bunch of tactics, bleh. I actually like to study opening positions, and as I'm going through, look for common moves that lead to mistakes, which are tactics. And that's a good example here in the structure that I see frequently.
Like, that's a tactic I wouldn't see in my London system.
Right, you would never get that in the London system, so do you really need to know it?
No.
So Puzzle Rush, you're aware of the tactic and you found it because of that, but for you as a player, if you're just playing London systems, that's never going to occur.
Right.
But for a King's Indian player, Phillidor player, Czech system player, Czech Benoni player, where we get this lockup and a bishop on e7 versus a bishop on g5 or h4, it is pertinent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, d takes e5 was played, and my opponent goes bishop c4, and you're getting more and more the feel of a Phillidor that's gone wrong for white, just because his pieces are a bit misplaced.
Mm-hmm.
So, 3 candidate moves for black here.
Castles, g5, which are 2 very different moves. And
definitely.
then I like knight b6 as well. It's kind of like putting a question and opening stuff up some.
Okay. So let's take a look at all 3. Castles definitely is always an option. Doesn't hurt your position here at all. G5, I feel like we're going to have to start backpedaling immediately at g5 after bishop g3. The e-pawn is under attack, and we're going to have to play a move like bishop d6, and stuff's starting to feel like it's going wrong. Okay. If knight b6, same kind of deal. Knight b6, the e-pawn is weakened again, and after bishop b3, we're going to have to defend the e-pawn again. And notice with the knight on b6, the bishop dominates the forward squares, and if the forward squares are dominated of a piece, the piece is bad.
Okay.
So we would be assisting white with knight b6 in this position.
I guess just castles then.
That would be the best of the options, but I went with none of the above, because if the e-pawn is a problem in most of these variations, I want to be able to have the option to add another defender with queen c7.
Okay.
I play c6 because it's a multi-purpose move in the structure. One, I could play b5 to kick the bishop. That will give my c8 bishop a good square on b7. Then I could say play a6, c5, and then my entire queenside pawn phalanx is just kind of moving from this beginning lever with c6.
Okay.
Then on top of that, again, queen c7, the idea to defend e5. So, multi-purpose.
Mm-hmm.
He goes queen e2. Much better would have been a4, where I would play a5 to prevent him from playing a5. And after castle, castle, queen e2, rook e8, queen c7, I'm getting all the normal natural moves out of the way. And only now do I come up with a plan, knight f8, where I have the flexibility of this knight to go to g6 or e6 and potentially f4 like we saw in the previous game,
okay.
Or bishop e6. My bishop hasn't been doing anything. His bishop's great. Let's get rid of it, as we do a lot of arrows. Now, back to the main game. Queen e2. He did not play the much better a4. So that should be an alarm bell of what we should do here with black. What would a4 accomplish for white?
The ability to play a5.
What is it preventing black from doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Pawn to b5.
Mm-hmm. And that's why do it. Get the kick.
Mm-hmm.
So now here's another one. Like, we have multiple ideas here.
Yeah.
What's best?
I mean, to continue with the attack, a5, a4. But then I don't feel comfortable with that c-pawn.
And as soon as you play a5, he can just go a4 himself. And then if you go b4, you're actually pretty close to busted. Very, very quickly here.
Yeah, it just didn't feel right.
Because now his knight has this square, and e5 is looking tough to defend, especially, say, queen c7, bishop g3. This is really rough.
Okay.
So I find this interesting because I see this mistake a lot in my students' games. They find the right idea, but then they rush it. You can slowly improve. Notice how white is one move away from being fully developed. We've still got our queen on d8, our king still in the middle, our bishop on c8 is not doing anything still.
Do we want to play for c5, c4?
And if you touch the c pawn,
You lose your b pawn.
so
a6.
we shore it up with a6.
Okay.
So solid, no problems. And if he goes a4 or something in the meantime, I just go bishop b7, and I keep the tension in the position. And say if we go for this type of scenario, all you did was make a target out of this guy, and this guy has magically evolved into a useful piece as opposed to not doing anything a move or two ago. So I play a6, and my opponent goes queenside, which was kind of unexpected. Typically, you castle kingside. Now what?
Well, now I'm just like immediately thinking attack the king. So pawn storm with c5 is a candidate.
Okay.
Queen a5 or b6, getting her over in the area, and a5. Those are my three.
Back to a5.
Yeah.
So my first thing is, if you go c5 ever, he starts looking at like ideas like bishop d5 to drop into the space left behind.
Gotcha.
And I want to keep that bishop stuck for ideas. At the same time, I'm looking at how are my pieces going to coordinate in the future. And with his rook on d1 x-raying my queen, not a big fan of that. So to start things off, simply queen c7, removing potential ideas from white in the future, just keeping myself safe. He goes knight f1, which is one of those indicators that the knight's going to go to e3 and then f5. So I need to start getting with the program with attacking. Otherwise, white, by the time that knight gets to f5, that's going to be annoying, and I don't want to have to deal with that.
a5?
a5.
Okay.
Yeah. He goes c3.
Not c5 because of the same reason.
Correct.
Okay. a4, just keep going. And then a3.
a3, he would go b3,
Yeah.
and it locks it up.
Right.
We want to bust it wide open. So a3, one candidate move. Two more.
b4.
b4, that's another one.
And then queen a5 to get ready for a3.
Okay, if queen a5, he goes a3, and that prevents b4. So that's why we need to play b4 now.
Okay.
Now it begins to get fun. If c takes b4, a3, and after b3, bishop takes b4, where it's getting easy to play. We have ideas like bishop a6. We can push the c pawn home. We're knocking at the door. Now, after b4, white goes c4. Three candidate moves.
Interesting pawn sacrifice idea with b3. Opens up stuff. I mean, I'm happy to give away some pawns.
It's all about the attack, so yes.
Yeah.
We're keeping him. His knight's still on f1. We're never letting him get to this plan if we're...
Yeah, and I don't want to have any other candidate moves here because it's just you need to do something.
Yeah,
now.
b3.
Okay.
That's why it's the best move. You're right. And after bishop b1...
Takes. Open it up. Oh, wait, no, they don't have b3 anymore. You can play a3.
a3. We're just keeping going. We're just going to push him right off the board. Now, if a takes b3...
we can make a queen?
a2, and the best he's got is the sack. So in the main game, he played b takes a3.
Bishop takes...
Check.
Yeah, just queen...
Check.
Just keep going. Knight
check. And mate.
Ew.
with the nice finish. So I really like this game in particular because you kind of get this innocuous position from queen c7 where nothing really is going on to all of a sudden from one aggressive plan all these moves just kind of come together. And it's not often you get to see this type of breakthrough dynamic unless you're like a Sicilian player all day every day.
Like the dragon stuff.
And it was kind of a cute mate. So that will do it for this one.